Looks like we're going live right now.
Okay.
This is a different type of setup here.
Well, I'm always ready.
All right, we're grateful for the blessing of being able to grateful for the opportunity to be able to stream and to serve, and to support our format for and our forum for conversation. This is the Black Press Audio Digest, and we are grateful to be able to come into your place of watching and observing and learning as we talk about the reopening of schools. We have, as it were, the school plan that has been set forth according to the Georgia plan to recovery for K through 12. And out of that plan has come a program of total reintroduction of face-to-face in-class learning opportunities for our fall semester. That is scheduled at this moment to commence on Monday, August 17th. So I am joined this evening by Miss Michaela, I want to say Carter.
Clark Brockington.
Clark Brockington.
Yes.
I'm not reading your name.
It's okay.
Clark, no, it's not. I should know your name. So I would want somebody to know my name too. And she is a entrepreneur. She is a accountant, tax specialist for those of you who need your taxes analyzed and prepared. And she's also a entrepreneur. She's also the state coordinator with the NAACP. And she works with the local NAACP for specific acts and purposes that relate to the vision of the NAACP. We're anticipating being joined by Mrs. Sajuana Williams. This is Ms. Williams.
Dr. Patterson.
Well, Dr. Patricia, Reverend Dr. Patricia Patterson.
That will be me.
Absolutely. Good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Local here in Douglas, Georgia, Clark, Coffee County. And she is not only a physician, she's also a pastor. So she has a dual interest in terms of not just the protection of her flock, but also the protection of her patients. And she's a vested interest in this community, as everyone who's want to be on this conversation. Our objective today was to basically open up this forum for conversation about any concerns, suggestions, endorsements, or what have you, not just for those who are talking through this Zoom format, who've been invited, but also those of you who will comment, who are streaming live on Facebook. And we want to give you an opportunity, if you will, to basically voice your opinion, to tell us what you have, what you think, what you feel is actually important for us to know as it relates to this school reopening initiative, what you think is some very key issues that we need to be looking at as it relates to the COVID-19 moment, this COVID-19 season. And so I want to welcome you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. The two of you, I anticipate a retired educator, Ms. Sajuana Williams, who will also join us momentarily. Now, I'm not sure, but now, Dr. Patterson, have you actually seen the proposed format that has been the governing factor in reference to the reopening plan yet?
I have not.
Okay. But you've heard, you have still heard some
Right.
things.
Yes, I've had conversations with people about it, but I haven't seen it in writing myself.
So you haven't seen it yourself, but you do have some concerns about what you've heard.
Absolutely. Now I'm going to mute for just a minute while I'm leaving work, so I won't
Okay.
distract, but I'll be back on in just a second. I'll still listen, but I'll be muted.
I understand. All right. We're anticipating also Coffee County board member Tonya Wilkerson, who will also join us and voice her concerns and her perspective in reference to this matter. And so we're looking forward to what I hope will be a robust conversation that will take us to the very heart of why we're talking today. And that is to really address the core matter of the safety of our children. So with no further ado, and with Dr. Clark on, with Dr. Patterson on, and no further ado, and Ms. Michaela, we'll make sure that we give Dr. Patterson on opportunity for, I think, what we might want to consider some thorough conversation. And we, again, want to give an opportunity for those who are join us streaming with us to also voice your concerns. There's a clip that Mrs. Williams, a former retired educator, Ms. Sajuana Williams, sent me. It is a conversation with Tucker head coach Brian Lamar. And I want to share that at our earliest convenience. And perhaps I would want to share it as a way of kind of introducing our conversation today, to kind of give everybody a sense or glimpse of what he sees as some of the real issues of what we're talking about. Because I think it really sets out for me. Hi, Ms. Wilkerson. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Great. It's awesome to have you with us. You're with Ms. Michaela Brockington, and also Dr. Patricia Patterson is on. She's on mute at the moment. She's kind of transitioning from her place of practice to kind of de-COVIDize herself. She goes through an entire protocol of getting all the COVID off of her because she wants to remain safe. And so she takes very seriously the possibility of infection and contamination. And if a professional physician sees and understands the importance of being extremely careful about any infection, certainly that type of mindset should be certainly adhered to in reference to our school system. And so thank you for taking the time to be with us, Ms. Wilkerson, and I appreciate very much your input as we get ready to go into this. I'm going to take a moment, if you don't mind, just for a few moments and play for all of you. I'm going to show off a little bit. I hope I can do this without embarrassing myself. But there is a particular clip of a head coach in Tucker whose perspective I think is valid as it relates to the whole matter of reopening the schools at this point and the issue of safety. So I'm going to open up, I'm going to share my screen, if you will, and open up my Facebook page and show the video with him speaking. And I want you to just take notice of what he's saying and then offer your perspective along with what you're hearing him say. And so let me see if I can do this as expeditiously as possible without embarrassing myself. All right, let me get I'm gonna get that video going.
No, honestly, right.
All right, let me see if I can get the video.
Okay.
All right, let me see if I can get this going here. Share my screen. Share it like that. And play it. Can you all see it?
It's not enough.
Let me start over.
I'm excited about that. But I'm at safe word here is important. We shouldn't be playing football. For the safety of the kids and the coaches. You know, as hard as we can right now. Yes. Not being able to. So the way we work out the part, they have to be in a weight room. Or we have is to make sure that they're okay, making sure they all season here.
Reverend Logan,
Uh-huh.
we can't hear it.
Can't hear it.
No, sir.
We're not ready to play football right now.
Now we can hear it.
I didn't do anything.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Schools have had shit
I
down.
didn't do anything. I just had it on.
Okay. And
Can you see it?
I can see it. It's going like that. Hold on one second. I can see it. It's going like that. Hold on one second.
Can you see it, Ms. Wilkerson?
It's going like that. Ms. Wilkerson just emailed me. She said that she cannot hear on the Zoom. If she probably log out and log back in, she probably can hear.
I'm going to stop it.
Okay.
I'm going to stop the share and come back to us. Did you hear any of what the coach was saying?
No, sir.
Essentially, the coach was saying that we have to do what's right for the children in terms of the program itself of sports. He was speaking to the issue of sports and how he's in Gwinnett County and how they have to, he's in Tucker, Georgia, and how they have to, they've decided to, he's proposing that they shut down the sport until the season until the spring. He feels like that gives enough time for the cases to diminish to the place where it's safe to possibly go and engage in sports again. But with the cases being so high, it's a challenge to have that competition like that. So he's thinking about the safety of the players as well as the families that the players will interact with. And so he's, like I said, he's proposing an adjustment to the schedule. They all want to play. He says he has a great football team. They have a great opportunity to actually, can y'all hear me now? Can you hear me now, Ms. Wilkerson?
She cannot. She just messaged me and told me she cannot.
She's not muted, as far as I can tell. She might need to see if she's muted her own. Oh, she's not muted.
I'm texting her to log out and come back in.
Yeah, she might need to do that because I can hear you and I heard Dr. Patterson. She's the only one I can't hear. She might need to log off and come back in. You put that in the chat.
I can hear. Yeah, I can hear everyone.
Okay,
Dr. Patterson can hear. She's the only one. So she might. Dr. Patterson, did you hear the coach?
Now, I couldn't really hear the video, but I assumed it was because I was on the phone and not on the Zoom. So it would go in and out. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I've heard the conversation.
I see. Let me put in the chat here for Ms. Wilkerson to log out and log back in. So she can, she's the Galaxy 5. Okay, that's what she's doing. I was trying to share the screen so that you could see where a coach has actually been grappling with the issue of reopening schools and the tension between that and playing sports. In a nutshell, his thesis is if it's unsafe to really be back in the schools, or if it's unsafe to play sports, then it's unsafe to be back in the schools. And additionally, there needs to be a uniform approach to the athletic season because you don't want to have one school that's playing and another school that's not, and then you have disadvantaged players and teams because one team has been practicing, another team is not. Additionally, you have outbreaks within the teams. If you're talking, Ms. Brockington, we can't hear you because you're muted. You're muted, so we can't hear you. If you're making a comment.
Oh no, I'm not talking. I'm talking to Miss Wilkerson, trying to talk her through.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the coach is more or less saying, in essence, he just doesn't feel like it's the best time right now to, expose students and or student athletes to this particular to this environment with heightening, with your cases spiking, and with no real safe protocols. Is Ms. Wilkerson speaking? She needs to unmute herself. She might be muted. All right, so that is part and parcel of the issue that we're dealing with. Everything is go on this end. Dr. Patterson, while we have you, and I know you're transitioning, and I appreciate your extraordinary effort to be a part of the conversation. What have been some of your questions and or perspective related to this whole issue of reopening the schools?
So I have several concerns. Number one is it's very difficult to make concrete decisions in the midst of a fluid situation.
Mm-hmm.
From a healthcare perspective, every day something changes about this virus.
Mm-hmm.
The symptoms, the presentation, and so you have to constantly stay on top of it.
Right.
And so it's very difficult to make hard, fast rules when everything about the pandemic changes. Secondly, early on, there was a school of thought that children were immune. And so that children were safe and it only affected people over 65 or people who had some health issue.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 3 months, we found that that was untrue.
Mm-hmm.
What we learned is that children, much like any other disease process, are not affected the same way as adults.
Mm-hmm.
So they present differently and their disease is different,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean that they can't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many times with kids, they are asymptomatic carriers, which raises a whole nother issue, is that even if the child doesn't get sick, the child can come home and make their caregivers or household participants sick. So depending on what the household looks like, whether it's an impact from the child being sick personally or just affects the head of household, so that affects the family economically as well as physically, there's so many dynamics involved that you can't just say, let's go back.
Mm. And so that poses an amazing set of paradoxes. And then to add to that, an athlete in the house who's maybe playing teams and they're in contact with teams from other communities. And so you further exacerbate the situation because you've got other variables that are even less controllable than just the regular kind of going back and forth to school might be.
Correct. And from some of what I've heard, the shared infection hasn't even come from other teams. It's come from training, mm-hmm. and whether it's the athlete or the coach. Mm-hmm. But, I can't say that I'm well versed in it, but in the systems where I've talked with people here in Coffee County, Thomas County, that's been a concern, mm-hmm. that either a student athlete or a coach came up positive, which means that everybody had to be tested. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of dynamics involved in how you keep not only athletes safe, but more importantly, families safe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I read the CDC's report on school reopenings and the justification for reopening the schools, and they couched their, I should probably just read the thing. I was so incensed by it, I wouldn't even copy it. The essence of what they were saying was that poor children need to go back to school because it's in their best interest to get the services, the food, the free lunch, free breakfast, free lunch, and of course the socialization education, of course, and so forth. And so it's almost as if they're trying to justify uh, introducing going back to schools because we definitely want the lower income, so-called lower income, disadvantaged young people to make sure that they get all the benefits from an educational experience.
The irony of that is that
So,
all of the statistics have shown that it's the people in lower socioeconomic groups that have the poorer outcomes. So that's the paradox.
It's kind of cynical in my mind. It's almost as if, we're not dealing with the root cause of why you're economically disadvantaged, but we're trying to use that as justification for going after the money that is really not allocated in such a way that helps to help the root cause of your malady in the first place. That's a whole different conversation. Ms. Wilkerson, talk to us about some of what you've seen in terms of your own leadership challenges on the board and the challenges you've had in pushing an agenda for child safety.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now say that again. I couldn't really understand what your question is.
I was asking you, what have been some of the challenges that you found as you have pushed for a child safety and for reconsideration of the current approach to reopening the schools? What have been some of your challenges?
Okay, well, my challenges are, I'm just thinking that at this time of the year that football and stuff is so important now that, they're willing to go through any measures to get this started where there can, be football. And so it's not, the safety of the kids that are now important to them. I'm thinking that it's all about, the sports at this time, because when all or whatever was in, they was willing to go and shut it down and for the protection of all the kids and as well as the staff there. But now, football season is in, and I love sports myself, but then I have underlying health issues that I'm concerned about. And my son plays football. So it scares me to death that he's out there and then coming home to me, so and I have all my safety precautions here at the house, but it's the thing that they're not practicing social distancing. And that's not one of their main objectives here with getting back into school, that they just saying that, hey, there would be no social distancing even on the buses, even at school, so in the way that they just planning on going back, it's just kind of scary and and questionable. Should these kids go back under these terms or what?
And your answer to that question is absolutely not.
No, I don't think they're ready. Yeah, I don't think they're ready. They haven't come up with nothing, no plans that I've heard of that would be sufficient enough, for these kids to go back. Still these teachers, you have some teachers with underlying health issues that are scared to go back. Yeah, you have them, they're terrified on going back, but since it's all about this federal funding that I'm just assuming that they got to open back, whether it lasts 2 weeks or not, they just got to open back, I guess. I don't know, but it's scary.
So what can we do to help impact the situation, do you think?
Well, I was really thinking that if groups come out, if more than 2 or 3 come together on this thing, that you can't really hear the choir sing when you have 2 or 3 in it. and especially with no microphone, you know, but if you,
I was listening to you.
okay, but if you, you know, if you get a, what they call a mass choir, you know, where you got several multiple hundreds of choir members, you know, you don't need a microphone because they can hear you loudly. You know, they can look at your numbers and tell that you mean business, that you are saying, you know, but if you only have one or two that are interested, and like I told you earlier, you know, you have some that are interested, then they'll call you back uninterested. You know, some of them that, well, I don't want my child to go, and then they'll call back. Is it too late for them to get off the virtual and get in school?
Yeah.
You got the mix match, you know, community. Some that's in, some that's out, and then the ones that out, they jump in, and ones that's in, they jump out. So, you know, you just got the mix match community. And if you don't stay on one accord, you know, you're not gonna get anything done, you know.
So what you're saying is that the community needs to come together and basically approach the Board of Education with some demands or with their concerns.
Yes, they're gonna have to, you know, and so I wish we could have jumped on this you know, ahead of time, because now these cats probably thinking they already got their stuff together, they headed back in. So, you know, but like I said, we still can voice our opinion, you know, whether it does anything now or whenever 2 weeks later, when they having to shut it down because of all of these positive, you know, COVID tests that's coming, as you know, positive COVID cases, you know, that they're gonna have to shut it down, you know, because they got these children too wide open at risk, you know, for this COVID-19.
So you are definitely certain, you feel certain that there's going to be an outbreak after the schools reopen?
I'm thinking so, you know, because this outbreak is I mean, it's going around now. It's outbreaking now, you know, and school hasn't even gotten in. It's because of the people that are going to the beaches and you know, the clubs, and you know, everything has started back wide open. So, you know, everybody has jumped in with you know, without a life jacket. And so they are, you know, they have put themselves at risk for the COVID-19. So now they don't tell anybody that they have it, and they're being around people. So they're constantly spreading this. And you know, you might be seen by somebody that's been tested positive, but they didn't want nobody to know. So now they still coming out, you know, and you know, infecting everybody else. So that's how the spread is going on. You know, if everybody that was tested, if they go in quarantine, sit themselves down, you know, it might be less people that are infected now, but they're contaminating everybody because they're not willing to stay home and quarantine themselves. You know, this is like this COVID-19. It seems to me like people are so ashamed of it. Like it might be AIDS or something, you know, back in the days. But they are ashamed to have it, so they won't let nobody know that they got it. You know, and they just willing to come and sit around and you know, just infect everybody, that's contaminate the whole crowd, because they're not willing to, you know, quarantine.
Dr. Patterson, you brought up an issue that directly connects to what Ms. Wilkerson is talking about, and that is the infection among children, and particularly those children who have pre-existing conditions. You know, within our communities, African American communities, because of environmental justice issues or environmental disparities, i.e., we tend to be in locations and neighborhoods that are more contaminated with pollutants, with
Mhm.
garbage, with trash. We have more, as it were, vehicular traffic, which is has a carbon footprint, if you will. So then they're inhaling more of the particulates and polluted air in communities where trucks are driving through, trains are coming through, and those communities are more inhabited by people of African descent, the youth of African descent. So you already have some issues with breathing, lung issues, with asthma, and so forth. And so it just takes one child to possibly get the virus and have an attack in class or something, or have an issue and possibly even expire.
Right.
Your thoughts?
Correct. Well, I agree with you. So we're concerned about the health of the child, certainly. But what I heard Ms. Wilkerson say also is a very relevant point, because even if the child has very mild symptoms and can quarantine, how many people that may have a much more severe outcome will be affected? So if a child comes home and gives it to a parent who has pre-existing conditions, then, because the incubation period is between 2 and 14 days, you may have it and spread it and not even know it.
Wow.
And so then how many other people can be infected / affected?
Right. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Elder Brenda Moore, who's streaming with us, says when you have coaches who work in the system with COVID and you have some children who are ready to work and play sports with COVID, you can't help but have an outbreak. What has already happened is indicative of what's to come if we do not do social distancing and follow CDC rules.
Absolutely. And on a bigger scale, if you think about actually having a game, then you extend that risk from the players and the coaches to the people who actually attend. And recently I read, I want to say it may be Alabama, I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong, but there was a football game where a large number of people were infected. So then you talk about, because remember, it only takes one person to pass it to one person who goes into a Walmart, into a Harvey's, into a Publix, into a work environment,
right,
and make a mass infection.
It only takes one. It only takes one child. I'm privy to, for instance, and what you're just saying is relevant in the sense that a child could get on a bus. And so in a conversation, and you could correct me, Ms. Wilkerson, about the protocols for ensuring that a child doesn't get on the bus while infected. What is your understanding of how that works?
Well, from what I was understood before today, before I talked to one of the bus drivers, that they were gonna have thermometers on the bus where at each stop, the bus driver would check for the temperatures before they get on the bus. But, when we heard the bus driver talk this morning, that it wasn't nothing like that. Okay, so, we're giving two different stories. We get one story from the board, and then they giving them another story at the bus barn.
Right.
So now we really don't know how that is going, because said that what they would do with the children that were, had high fever, that they would wait until another bus or car come and pick them up before they come, if the parent is not at home whenever they leave. So we really don't know how that's going, because like I said, there are mixed communications.
Yes.
We one thing, and then they're giving the bus drivers another thing. So we don't know, that from the sound of it, you know, talking to the bus driver this morning, that they will not be taking temperatures. But they told us that they told us they had ordered X amount of thermometers, that every bus driver will have one on every bus, and they will take every temperature that gets on the bus. You know, that was after we had made complaints about, they was talking about bringing the children to school and then getting them tested once they get there. I say, well, now you've had a child to come on there and contaminate the whole bus. Now everybody got it when they get to the school. Some of them might, you know, be feverish then, some of them might not be. And they might be carrying that, and then they pass it along not knowing that they have it. Like Dr. Patterson says, you know, a silent carrier, you know, that's affecting everybody.
So you have one child that gets on the bus with the virus, and then basically that's everybody that's on the bus.
Yes. So you're looking at, you know, these buses are overcrowded anyway. And like I told them, that this bus that comes through here that heads to Kenwood, that's one of the bigger areas out there where the Black children live at. That bus is overloaded. That bus come through here, a lot of the kids having to stand up. You got 3 to a seat.
That's unsafe
and
in
then
and
some
of
of
itself.
them standing up. So it's already was a hazard. Like I told them, I made complaints about this bus several years. You know, not several times, but several years I've been complaining about this bus because my son was riding the bus. And we had to either take him, or either he was catching a ride with one of his friends because he didn't want to stand up. By the time the bus come from, you know, pick up here in the morning and go to Kenwood and get those kids and come back this way and pick him up, it's overloaded. So imagine now them being overloaded with Corona on it.
So, you know, as you talk about the bus being overcrowded, I'm thinking about city buses that I'm aware of in major metropolitan cities. And those buses are designed for people to stand up. But school buses don't have those railings across the top, or the hooks or loops. So they basically hang on by the seats, which is a hazard.
Dangerous.
Yes, dangerous, because they don't have seat belts, plus they're standing up. So if the bus have to make an abrupt stop, that child is a projectile through perhaps toward the front of the bus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of work to do.
Have we spoken to a physician? Have we spoken to a physician as far as the Board of Education? Have we sat down and spoken to healthcare providers that are actually seeing firsthand people passing away on ventilators? Have we spoken to?
Well, you know, like I said earlier, you know, they say they have someone from public health that are in their leadership meetings, you know, discussing this COVID-19, you know, but I don't know, you know, because we're not in the meeting. Only thing, I'm just listening to what they saying. You know, I also listened to them to mean that they was gonna have thermometers on the bus, but then I also heard the bus driver saying this morning that he didn't know anything about that. So that's why
you're getting inconsistent information.
And
you're getting incoherent kind of procedures. And then the one thing that really incenses me is the fact that you are not making wearing a mask mandatory, even in the face-to-face classroom setting or in the school setting. That to me makes absolutely no sense.
Absolutely none. You know, because like I said, I don't know why they keep throwing this off on Kemp, you know, because there are stores around here, like even Walmart, where Kemp is the governor here as well.
That's
you know,
right.
so
but you're not getting in there without a mask on.
Yeah, you can't go in without a mask. So, you know, these places are mandating these masks where you have to wear them. And why they with this bogus stuff, it's nothing but it's so political. You know, you got these rich people that, you know, thinking that their kids are not going to be affected, that who's affected is us, you know, so they don't want their children, their children don't want to wear masks, so they don't want them to wear any. So now that this is what they telling them, and Dr. Lease, they just go along with what the big money folks say, forget about us, you know, that they like I said, it's just so political now, everything. And it's about $1, whatever they work is now is concerning their dollars. So if we got to go back to school and affect everybody to try to kill half of them just to get the money started, we'll do that. And then if we don't want to wear masks, some of the kids, rich kids, don't want to wear masks and affect the other ones and kill them, we'll do that. So it's all about, what somebody else want, and not all about the safety of everyone.
Doc, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Dr. Patterson. I'm gonna ask you, what do you see happening if course goes as is planned right now?
So that there's no doubt that what you're going to see is a spike in numbers, but the troublesome part is that it won't just be a spike in positive cases. You're going to see a spike in probably the number of deaths. And unfortunately, what Mrs. Wilkerson just said is absolutely correct. This is political, because from the very outset, all of the reopening has been based on economics. It's not been based on public health and safety. As a matter of fact, earlier today, I was reading a study from something from a Harvard study that has recommended that 13 states shut down again. Georgia is one of those states just because of the numbers.
Jesus.
And so the unfortunate part is because from the federal government, there's been a mandate that if you don't open the schools, we're not going to give you any funding, which puts the states and the schools in a bind. And I think every family has to make a decision the best possible decision. The problem is that there are families who have the flexibility of saying, we're just going to do the virtual setting and I'm going to keep my child at home. But there are other families who don't have that luxury, who would love to be able to keep their kids home and keep them safe. But because of work commitments or other commitments, they don't have that. And so at this point, our options are two: to take what we know to be political and show our voice in November.
You got that right.
We have got to understand that this is what it is, because I'm going to go way out here on the limb and say, to be quite honest, with the appropriate leadership, we should never have been in this setting. We should never have been in this setting.
That's it.
Ebola could have done this to us had it not been caught. But had we started screening back in November and October when it hit China, then it would have never gotten here. But now the cow is out the barn and we're trying to chase the cow, but the cow is winning. And while the cow is winning, we're dying. Yeah. And so, because we knew about healthcare disparities long before COVID-19, we knew that in every setting, socioeconomics and cultural status had a significant impact on outcomes. COVID has just taken the mask off. It's just shown this is where we really stand. So I think despite the threats and the financial things, families who have the capacity, families and and support systems that have the capacity to undergird families who want to keep their kids safe do it. I think the only other thing we can do is pray and offer support to the best of our ability, because I don't know. I mean, when you see that in one state, this is what the numbers are, and we continue to act as though that's not true, I don't know what it's going to take for leadership to say we've got a problem, except to get better leadership.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
Better leadership.
If you have never had a reason to vote before, you certainly have one now. And we ought to thank him for that effect as well, and not take it lightly that the best organizing tool we have is the current leadership in Washington, D.C. No more urgent issue is there than for us to vote and to make a change, because that particular issue of withholding federal funds from schools, which try to exhibit a level of safety protocols to protect the students and the faculty and teachers and educators, for that matter, is and treats it as a liability, as opposed to the fact that the virus itself, exposure to the virus itself is that very liability. That, I think, it just sounds extremely troublesome to me. In the moments that we have as we get ready to close, I don't only like to do analysis, but I also like to offer any redress, any steps towards particular actions that we can do to empower ourselves. What can we do?
Well, I think we headed in the right direction, like forming these groups, talking about this, educating ourselves more on what we need to do, the steps that we need to take. So I'm thinking now that we are actually headed in the right direction. It's just all in getting more supporters, more followers, because these cats, they always want to direct to the facts, so if we get our facts and numbers together, that these numbers are constantly rising, these people are constantly dying, and then now we want to continue to have something like this program, sports and all of this kind of stuff, when these numbers are tampering up like this. So we need to we headed in the right direction, but like I said, it's gonna take more than just a few of us, to be heard. We gonna have to bring a Taliban.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. And thank you for your leadership, and I appreciate your willingness to go before your colleagues on the board and state your concerns emphatically, and then to support the community outcries for adjustment in the policies. Ms. Brockington, what do you think, Ms. Michaela? What do you think would be?
My child will not be going to Coffee County school system, period, because she has asthma. Okay. And for me to allow a school system to say that it's okay for kids to attend this school system and be in front of each other. Also, there's teachers who are going. I've spoken to one teacher that had COVID-19. She stated she had the works. If she stated she had the works, she no longer have it. She is fearful of even going to school and giving it to someone else, a child, a kindergarten student. And she's fearful of getting it again, because no one knows the actual statistics or data or anything or measurable analysis on if we're going to get it or not. This is ridiculous.
Mhm.
The kid should come first.
Absolutely.
My child will not attend a school system until they get I don't know. She haven't even been out in public because of asthma. So she surely isn't going to be
Going to the school. I can see that, absolutely. Dr. Patterson, one of your patients, Mr. Jay White, says hello.
Tell him I said hello.
All right, Brother Java, she says hello. Dr. Patterson, I think one of the things you pointed out in terms of the health risk and effects on children is, I think, the foundational platform that they are basing the justification for reopening schools. In other words, they're saying that since the younger the children are, the less susceptible they are to harmful effects of the virus, and therefore reopening the schools is a plausible idea and process. But you're saying, in effect, that that's not the case, that there are contradictory facts related to COVID-19 infection in children because they presented the effects of it, the actual symptoms and effects of it are varied in children as opposed to adults, and that they can also transfer. Talk to that a little bit. Tell us, I mean, because it seems like they're going to a whole different source material, primary source and secondary source material to get this information. How can we get that information, and how can we give that to them? We anticipate, for instance, meeting. Go ahead.
So here's the thing. That information has no foundation, and that what Mrs. Brockington just said is she has a daughter with asthma. To say that children can't get it would be to say that 100% of children are healthy. Well, we know that's ludicrous because children have asthma, children have diabetes, children have cancer.
Yes.
And so you can't assume that youth means health. That's unlearned. That's not a learned position. So number one, we don't know that. Sickle cell, a major factor, absolutely. And any other type of blood discretion. So number one, children have health issues. But the other thing is that we don't know what the long-term effects are because it was probably late April, May, when we learned that children manifested neurologically.
Yes.
As opposed to pulmonary.
Right.
And so what happens to that child down the road? Because we haven't been in it long enough to know what the long-term effects are.
Right.
We're just learning what the short-term effects are. The other thing is that you also got to think that particularly with kindergarten children who are still in a developmental phase, that we're going to take a child that from 0 to 5 has been taught to be social, has been taught to be all of these things, and we're going to restrain them in a room and say, don't touch anybody, don't get close to anybody, put on this mask, and then we want them to be emotionally healthy? That's crazy. So we haven't even looked at the emotional impact on taking a child and trying to reshape them for 1 year, and then next year take them and say, okay, unlearn everything we told you last year. And you want them to be healthy.
And be schizophrenic. So how can we get this information, and do you know of any precedent where information like this was presented to school board or parents and they actually...
So what I can do is I have a very good friend who's a pediatrician in Texas, in Houston, which is another state that's being terribly affected by the disease. I'll reach out to her and see what literature and information she can share. But again, this is a fluid state, and so it changes from moment to moment. but I'll reach out to her and see if she can get any information, and
Okay.
I'll share that, and you can share it with everyone else.
I appreciate that. My objective this week was to at least start the town hall kind of conversation. We start, it's like with Jesus in Acts 1:8. He said, you'll be witnesses of me in Jerusalem and in Judea and then into the uttermost parts. And so this is kind of the Jerusalem conversation this week. My hope next week is to spread this town hall to other communities around the state of Georgia to do some wider conversations that expose us to the dynamics within specific communities within the larger Georgia family geography. And I would like to invite you all to be a part of that. And I would like to ask you also to work with me as a committee, if you will, to identify others in other communities who may have insight within their other respective communities, Lowndes County, Clint County, Dougherty, Chatham, of course, Fulton, just to kind of help us to compare and contrast the approaches and the specific dynamics. Because one of the huge disparities, one of the huge, I think, challenges is you don't have a uniform approach to addressing this issue, and therefore you're not going to have uniform success in terms of lowering the numbers, and you're going to have paradoxes and tensions throughout this entire process that will constantly keep us from realizing any net benefit, a long-term net benefit. And so I'm asking you all to, kind of check your schedules and see if you can look at that, and then also kind of be on the watch for other studies, for other persons in other communities, family members or whoever that you might think might have some insight. I just want to have a larger conversation just to kind of help us empower ourselves, as you have mentioned. As you have said, knowledge is power, and sharing knowledge is empowerment. Knowledge is power, and sharing and learning from others is empowerment. It enables you to engage in movement and involvement and impact. We have the 17th, and Monday the 17th is when schools are due to reopen. Some people say it's too late. I don't think so. I think that it's never too late to do the right thing. Right. Never too late to do the right thing. And if we are committed enough, and we have, I believe that the way things have been happening in this world within the last 7-8 months, I think anything is possible. Who would have thought that something like what we've seen with the Black Lives Matter and the Confederate flags and statues coming down, who would have thought a year ago something like that would have happened?
Right.
So I want to say to you and to those who are streaming with us, don't look at what it appears to be. This time next month, we may be looking at the very thing we would like to see happen in terms of everything being virtual, and for the school system, for the athletic calendar to be recalibrated to the spring, which puts us after this flu season and allows the numbers of cases to flatten out, and for there to be even the possibility of some semblance of some kind of vaccine. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues. You do not have a vaccine that does not have side effects that you are aware of, because you're rushing in this, you're calling it warp speed, but it's really warped ethics and warped intentions, because the only thing that this is about is November 3rd. Nothing more, nothing less.
Dr. Logan, I had started a watch party, and there's some comments in there in reference to some questions you asked.
Okay. Do you have time, Dr. Patterson and Ms. Wilkerson, Mrs. Wilkerson?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to extend, if you don't mind. If you don't mind, we'll extend another 15 minutes or so. Thank you so much, Ms. Brown. So go right ahead.
Okay. So I posted, what precautions should we take? And Michael Newton, he said all staff should be tested 10 days prior to students returning, no
Right.
exceptions,
Right.
and put on restrictions of travel per every 9 weeks, with exceptions for medical travel and emergency. He also posted, we invest by getting the table dividers math. I believe there was some talk earlier said use our local churches as off-campus locations.
Right, exactly.
And I believe those are the precautions he stated that they should take. I don't have any more comments.
Okay, can you copy and paste those in the chat area?
Okay.
In our Zoom chat area, copy and paste these comments, because by the grace of God, we're hoping to have a face-to-face with our superintendent, Dr. Lease, and other officials to kind of discuss our concerns and things that we're hearing, and to offer recommendations. I think it's not enough to just do an analysis. I think you also have to offer some suggestions, some redress, some practical means of affecting positively the issues that you see. And so those suggestions, I think, will be certainly warranted. Elder Brenda Henderson says, a parent posted on her Facebook for her 4-year-old son was suffering and struggling with COVID, and they're using an alternative truth conversation called lying to try to reassure us that it is safe to come to school. But the one thing that would help us is to make links for virtual schooling available to parents who want an alternative to the public setting. She also says Friday night football and the money to be made by way of children returning to school is fueling this quick, not thought out dialogue that people in power as well as administrators are spewing out to parents and the community. And so this kind of buttresses what you were saying in terms of the fact that this is all about the dollar bill and nothing about the safety of our sons and daughters. And the predominant community that not only is affected by this, but are among those who play the sports is African Americans. So it's almost like our Black bodies are being sacrificed and our Black families are being sacrificed, but we have to be the ones to raise the clarion call. And that's why we can't be ashamed of representing ourselves and empowering our perspective. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. What type of, I'm 29 years old. So what type of direct action would you like for the millennials, the next generation? What would you guys like to see from us so that we are fulfilled in what we would like to do, because we are parents and some of us are college students, some of us would like to be educators. What can we do? Because I'm willing to march. Just gonna tell you, I'm willing to march. But I believe there's a lot of other people out there that are willing to, or they're willing to put some type of pressure so that things can happen. What can we do to activate? This is to Board of Education leader, Ms. Tonya Wilkerson, and also Dr. Logan and Dr. Patricia. We need to know a health stance. We need to know a reverend stance, and we need to know the person who's in charge stance. What can we do to get something going? I'm here on the side, like at the wayside, like this is. I don't want to see one child walk into that school system and sit in one of those seats. Just like in March, when it was COVID-19 uprising, they closed down the school and didn't ask any questions. We all had to figure out how we were going to stay home with our kids. We all had to figure out exactly what we were going to do.
Right.
And this is not brand new to us anymore.
Yeah.
This is something, we've had so many deaths. We had so many people to pass away. And I would not see a child pass away one day because of equity, because of our charter saying equity and excellence.
Yeah.
It's not about equity and excellence. If a child can't breathe, how can they read?
So let's unpack your question. We'll open it up to either Ms. Wilkerson or Dr. Patterson, Reverend Dr. Patterson. What can the millennials do, particularly those who are parents and who are aspirants for professional careers and opportunities?
I'm thinking that, I come up in a political background. My grandmother, she was one of the ones that they spoke on today. One of the ones that Reverend Branswell talked about. It was three here that they call three the hard way. Mr. Roper, Miss Coley, and my grandmother was the other one.
That sound like a whole
we
Western movie.
Yeah, raised that movement. So rallying is just all in me. So I feel like these young millennium babies need to get out and rally. They need to make a voice for their kids. If you can stand out and rally for your children to hang out on the block, you can get out and rally for your kids to stay protected. So hey, just it's all about making the right choices instead of just jumping on board for anything. Just see which one weighs out, which one is more important. You know what I'm saying?
I
Which
think
one
child living is more important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so. But hey, some people thinking that maybe their kids should hang out more, and some people might feel like what's more important that they safety. They stay away from all of this, where they won't have to worry about their children being in the hospital or even themselves being in there. Because now it's not like it used to be. Some people used to love to go in the hospital because they felt like they was being spoiled then. They sit back and have somebody bring them flowers and fruit baskets and all this kind of stuff. Now you got to go out there and if you better not be sicker than that white man because he gonna get that respirator before you. So you go out there playing if you want to. Hey, it's time to just get it together instead of fighting for the wrong things. Like John Lewis would say, it's time for us to get in some good trouble.
I'm ready.
It's time for us to get
Dr. P, what do you say?
So, what really, as I listen, what comes to mind is if, for those of us who can travel back in time to the Montgomery boycott, not only did they march, but they organized so that they weren't going to ride the bus. So they got together and they set up for people to have a ride. I think if there was some way that we could transition that from a car to a classroom, so that for those parents who have children who they would like to have in a virtual setting, but don't have the capacity to do it themselves, do we have people who would say, I'll help your child, let's set up this virtual setting, so that it opens opportunities. Yes, definitely rally, definitely have your voice out there, but you also got to have a plan so that your kids can be educated.
That's right.
And so can we get together, can we set up a schedule and say, I'm available for this time, I can log in.
Yeah. And that's where I feel like the problem is going to fall in, because, just from our background, and I'm hoping and praying that we change, hoping and praying that, we, find more unity instead of, bashing each other, because like I said, even on this walk, Michaela, she's been with me in this, movement that we started, even in this, we had a couple of board meetings that we were crowded and we had our speakers together and everybody was dynamic, but we also had those that were criticizing, those that are saying that, Tonya, you need to stop. Just let them have their way. Don't worry about that. just slow down, them folk gonna do what they want to do. So we went through so much of that. And like I tell anybody, you can't take everybody with you to win. So because you're gonna have them that's leaking what the group got going on, you're gonna have them that's falling out, you're gonna have them that's tired this week, so everybody can't go with you to win. So, but we had a lot of those that criticize and a lot of ones that they so used to being beat up on and stepped on and trampled on, and they don't see no other life for themselves.
Right.
And but like I tell them all the time, I could get in here and sit back. My son is the quarterback, and I can sit back and just shut my mouth and try not to make nothing bad for him, nothing bad for my family, but my thing is this is my job. I was elected for this. And the reason why I wanted to get in, because I saw that these children were being mistreated. They was not, we didn't have no equality here. What was good for them wasn't good for us. And what was bad for us, it wasn't bad for them. So I felt like that I can make my voice. I can raise a voice that I know I wasn't but one, but I can speak loud enough that where I can be heard. And I knew we needed some minorities in this system. So I'm one of the ones that haven't been scared to speak out. And I don't care what your status is or what your statue is, there. I'm human like you. God has no respect to person, so he don't respect you no better. So why not me talk? Why I can't say what I want to say? If you want to say, why I can't say what I want to say? So that's just how I feel. That's how I was raised. And like I said, I grew up in that background. I was raised up into that. And now I am the voice. I'm an advocate for my community. And we still get broke down with the words and the criticism, because these white people, they feel like they can come and pay us off and shut us up, but I'm not for sale. I don't have a for sale sign on my house, on my car, not on my forehead. So I'm not for sale. So you cannot buy my thoughts. You cannot buy my voice or my dignity. So, like I said, I'm out here. I'm out here to win it. And yes, it's going to be some losing battles, but we will never win if we never go to play.
That's true. That's true. Dr. Patterson, did you want to say anything else?
I had that. She said something about criticism and good trouble.
That's a John Lewis quote.
Yeah, I wanted to ask her a question about that because she said something then. What would she say to the teachers or the retired teachers that tell other teachers not to do nothing, or the people who say don't say nothing because you can lose your job? What do you say to those people? Because I know they think they might get in trouble.
Right.
But there's something called good trouble.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Sometimes.
Go ahead, Dr. Patterson.
Sorry. Sometimes the best response is silence. You just let people say whatever they say, and you smile because you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even worth an argument, because they say that knowing that your child and your family and your community is in trouble, then nothing you say is going to make a difference. So sometimes you have to speak volumes by what you do and not by what you say.
Amen.
Amen.
Let the church say amen. I'm reminded of one of the first scenes in the movie Selma, where Dr. King is in this, played by a British brother. I can't think of his name right now. Yellow, something like that. He goes in and he talks to LBJ and says, we need voting rights. And here's the president trying to push this thing on poverty, and LBJ says, there's nothing I can do about that right now. I got other things on my agenda, blah, blah, blah. King comes down the steps. He walks by Abernathy, and I think it's and Rusk, who was a part of his core organizing team, and he just says, it's Selma. He already knew what he needed to do before he went to the meeting with the president, and the fact that the president was not going to work with his agenda didn't stop him from knowing what he needed to do. He was like, oh, we got to do something. We got to turn up the heat. So the answer to your question, I think, Michaela, is what has already been said. There have to be those who are willing to do direct acts of nonviolent civil disobedience. I think that the headings you might want to look at have to do with education and mobilization. We have to educate ourselves, and then we have to educate our community. And what that means is connecting some of the facts, like what Dr. Patterson and Mrs. Wilkerson just mentioned, in terms of some of the facts. Some of the facts that's been put out by the CDC, unfortunately, I find it co-opted. I think it's co-opted by this particular administration. I think there's a lot of pressure to put out misinformation. Even the Georgia Department of Public Health is even being forced to withhold information or to massage the information to make it sound a little more benign than it really is. If you recall, a month and a half or so ago, it was revealed to the press, and I think AGJC put a story out on it, so the New York Times, that there were numbers and statistics that were withheld at best, or even adjusted in terms of the actual numbers of new cases in order to justify rushing to reopening the state. And of course, we've seen the ramifications of that. So you have seen the manipulation of information. Therefore, it is incumbent upon our movement and our effort to re-educate, to put out the facts. They're disturbing, like the facts of what Dr. Patterson is saying in terms of the fact that this is a novel coronavirus. We don't know some of the various manifestations of this virus in the bodies of young children, and we don't know the long range effects in their very young and yet growing bodies. We have no idea what this means. We might be talking about sterilization. We don't even know. We may be talking about some type of brain damage. We haven't seen the effects that they have on the comorbidities that children already grow up with, and that you've said that there are certain pre-existing conditions that different children will pose different symptoms and different sicknesses and illnesses. Right. So there's so many things that are unknowns that require that you have to overcompensate for safety before just simply going with an obtuse kind of approach. So re-education is extremely important. And you do that in a flyer, maybe two-sided, where it has bulletized facts. Okay. The bulletized statistics. There has to be a website or some type of Facebook page where people can log on to and get information 24/7. Hollering and screaming, huh?
NAACP has nothing but educational facts and stuff.
That's fine. Well, then it needs to be on a flyer, and it needs to be, people need to, well, so when we're out in public, if that's what you're doing, a sign has to have information where people can log on to it, or even a QRC code where people can put up their smartphone, show it, and then it goes right to the website. And so there has to be information. People who carry signs can't just carry, no justice, no peace. It also has to put, here's the website underneath it. And you have to have flyers to pass out along with the signs.
I'm a
So you
graphic
got,
designer.
so you got to give people the information. We got to pass out the flyers to the parents. We got to pass them out at the drugstores, at the grocery stores, at the Walmarts. People in the parking lot. We just got to pass out the flyers the week prior to going back to school. Where parents will be going to buy school supplies, you got to pass out the flyers. You have to re-educate the parents about what's going on. I'm getting a couple of responses. Let me just read a couple. Again,
we are done dying. That is our slogan.
Yes, and we're done being dumb. We're done being dumb. We're done being delimited and controlled. Elder Moore says when schools integrated in the 70s, a lot of the white parents in Coffee County did not want their children to go to school with children with African Americans. They didn't have established, so they didn't do what they needed to do to give the money to the Coffee County School District. They made their kids stay home, and they would not. Stay home that they might not stay home. I don't know. If we do stay home, we need to have an opportunity to do virtual schooling while we're at home until we see the code is going to when the system is going to do something like that. And Ms. Terka says it could be like chicken pox or mono that becomes dormant and comes back later in life as something else. Yep. So that's one of the things she's saying that can happen. She's saying, yes, ma'am.
Let me suggest that when whoever meets with the school officials, here's one of the questions I would raise. Okay. Because you can go on any of the websites and find out that, you know, the neurological impact it has on children. Right. So one of the questions I would ask the school officials, since we don't know what the long-term effect on anybody who's had the COVID would be, but we do know that it affects children neurologically. Okay. How will the school system plan to address any learning disabilities that may happen to our children as a result of contracting the virus because they're going back and being exposed? Because we got to look down the road. We can't look at today or tomorrow. Right. Because this is our future. Yes. These are our, not just today, but this is tomorrow. So if we put them in environments where they may have long-term neurological deficits and or learning disabilities, how will this system address that fact?
Right. That's real. And we're gambling with the futures of our sons and daughters. I mean, we are talking about some immediate impact, but we have no idea, like you just said, of what the long-term effects. And you said in children, it shows up differently than in adults. So it attacks different systems and tissues, different parts and organs in the child's body. I appreciate that. I will pose that question. Thank you so much. And if there are cases that we've seen already, for instance, where a child's neurological system was adversely impacted?
I can go back and research, but one of the earlier cases, and I want to say it may have been in Chicago, was a 6-year-old who was the child of 2 first responders. And that child came down with, I want to say she began having seizures, and it turned out to be COVID-19. And I'll see if I can pull that. And so after that, the report started to show that as opposed to coughing, children present differently. Now, the numbers may not be high, and that might be somebody's response. Well, it's not a lot. But I had a medical school professor who used to tell us that it's common to those who have it. And so while it may not be high numbers, if it's your child, that child is significant. And
that's high enough, isn't it? If it's your child, it's high enough. I mean, would you want it to be your child? The question is, would you want it to be your child? And would you want to be the one who finds out the hard way that it is your child?
Not mine.
Because that means the child's future is already compromised in its beginning.
Right.
Because of negligence.
From kindergarten.
Yes.
From kindergarten. Yes.
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 It's like what they talk about in terms of what Dr. Kunjufu used to talk about in terms of the targeting of Black boys. By the time they're in the 3rd grade, they're already targeted and titled and labeled and redirected to, either some form of incarceration or just
pipeline.
Yeah. So I mean, you have it. Part of the driving factors in this again goes back to money, because you're also talking about experimental drugs that will be used to treat the short-term symptoms, but may not even address the root cause of the symptoms. And so you have children who are going to be on medications for the rest of their lives, but that's a financial boom for pharmaceuticals. And and so you're using the bodies of young babies who become, who can only survive on these medications because of some unprecedented, anomalous medical calamity or malady that they are going to have to grapple with for the rest of their lives because of a novel virus that nobody knows anything about.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy how when you first enter juvenile detention, they do a mental health check, or when you first enter prison, they do a mental health check, but we don't have any type of mental health checks as far as at the schoolhouse when there's a child that is in trouble or they might have issues going on. We don't have any type of psychologist on the ground. You have to go through an IEP program. You have to go through all this stuff to declare that your child is mentally unstable, rather than you have something right there to fix that issue. Just as now, we have videos of psychologists through VA and all the other programs, people doing drive-bys outside, but we don't have any type of psychological doctors within the school system. But the moment you hit that jailhouse or that juvenile detention center, you have a pill call.
Let me conclude what we were saying, and then we're going to get ready to wrap up. You may also want to have a phone number where parents will call in mass numbers to the school district and say, on any number of days, we want to go back, we want all virtual. And you might have to just bombard the school district with phone calls. Just jam the phone lines with phone calls. And anybody can do that. You can be anonymous and do that. You don't have to risk your job. You can block it, just bombard the school with phone calls, or just drop a letter off or box of letters, a petition saying we want the schools to go virtual for the first semester. So there are a number of things, but educating is critical. Educating is critical, and that's what rallies are about. Even if you have a sign out, don't just have a sign shouting what's wrong. Put a little link. Put a link so people can do some more research and find out what they need to find out to inform themselves. But rallies give information. Rallies get attention. Flyers give information, and directives give mobilization. And get people to really make the kinds of impact that you need to happen. And if need be, you'll have to have sit-ins. You'll have to block buses. I mean, you're gonna have to escalate it, in terms of what you got to be willing to do. You got to put your body on the line because your child's bodies are on the line too.
So everybody should call the 384-2086 number, the Board of Education, and just tell them we want virtual learning.
We want virtual learning. We think that the schools should be closed until after the flu season, and we think sports should be rescheduled for the calendar year. The sports should be put until the spring of next year. They can do whatever they want to do. You have to just, I mean, they did it for the Olympics, they did it for sports teams where people make all kinds of money. Of course, they should do that in situations where our children are playing for free. And those scholarships and those opportunities will be appropriately available based on the delays that the institutions are going to encounter themselves. It is going to work out. I'm also getting a statement from a streamer that says, I'm finding out that it's not necessarily COVID that delayed schools, but the remodeling of the inside of the high school is not complete.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They telling them now.
So they're not ready. So what does that tell me, what that says to you?
Yeah. Hey, like I said, this political. It's all about
They done spent too much money.
Yeah, it's all about the money.
Renovation. Get that nice performance theater out there so we can go be very theatrical. 1, 2, and 3. So, you know.
Maybe they can host some of these meetings out there and they'll be just that full where we are needed.
All right, let me just ask you all to close out with any final comments as we get ready to bring our Douglas town hall, Douglas Coffee County town hall to a close, and then prepare ourselves for next week when we'll enlarge the conversation to a wider community. I want to thank each of you again for adjusting your schedules. I thank you so much, Ms. Wilkerson, for being on this evening. Thank you so much, Ms. Brockington, for availing yourself to this opportunity. And thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Patterson, for just your willingness to adjust your schedule and kind of de-COVIDize yourself on the fly, coming from a contaminated environment, and just really being invaluable in terms of each of you giving amazing insight. And to all of those streaming with us, Sister Terica, Sister Elder Moore, Brother Jarvis, and others who I don't see, and those who've been a part of your watch party, thank them for their questions. And let's make sure that we put those as a part of what we address when we meet with the superintendent on Tuesday. We expect our numbers of pastors to grow and clergy. I think we have like 15 currently, and we're looking to double the number by next Tuesday in terms of those who will be present. It's a pastors and clergy only at this point. And I'll just kind of tell you that part of what we are willing to do is partner with the school system to provide space, safe space for our children that, you know, whose parents need to be comfortable with where their children are. We're going to have to be able to vet volunteers quickly because not everybody is in the church should be around children. I'm just going to tell you. But we have to be safe and careful with that as well. And just be willing to be transparent, proactive, and committed to what we need to do. So with that, I'm gonna shut up and let you all have the final word. Let me go to Dr. Wilkerson, Ms. Wilkerson, Ms. Brockington, and then finally with Dr. Patterson. Ms. Wilkerson.
Well, I just want to say thanks for inviting me. Thanks for coming aboard. And I just thank y'all. This is something that, you know, my heart has truly cried out for, and that's support from the community. And I just thank y'all for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you for your leadership.
I would like to thank you for the invite. I honestly thank y'all for the entire group for these action plans. I already posted. Call the 384-2086, any other numbers, cell phone numbers, anything that y'all can think of. We need to get this push of only virtual learning, y'all. So anyone who's watching, please call that number every day, every second that you can think of while they're open. And there's more action plans to come, and we're going to start the flyers, like you said, start passing around, try to get the word out.
Dr. Patterson?
I just again want to thank you for the invitation, for the opportunity to share. I don't have a child in the school system, but it takes a village to raise a child. I'm a part of this community, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be of any assistance that I can.
Absolutely. And again, thank you all. And thank all of you who streamed with us today. And thank all of you who will watch and share and watch party this conversation, and who will join us again 7 days from today as we give an update of our conversation with our superintendent, and then some upcoming initiatives and actions going forward so that we can impact for the improvement and betterment of our community, the outcomes that we desire as a responsible, healthy community of parents, mentors, and leaders. Thank each of you for all that you do, and we'll look forward to communicating with you throughout this week as we head to our larger, broader conversation. May God keep you and bless you is our prayer. Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you so much again.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a
Absolutely.
great night.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good night.
All right.
I didn't leave the thing.